The idea, Zerka, is for you to comment on the video that we've seen this morning on the From A to Zerka. What was your feeling first about the movie? Did you like it?
Yes, I liked it. It was quite good. But looking back, that doesn't refer only to the video. There might seem a complication or a confusion for people to realize when I say protagonist has to present him or herself as they are, and they are allowed to be as unspontaneous as they are. Because people say, hey, listen, we want to arouse spontaneity and creativity, but the whole point is that we want to see what results there are from the work that you've done in psychodrama. And in the beginning, people really aren't spontaneous. They're very anxious.
Mm-hmm.
They have to feel that they build trust. So that's not only referring to that particular point, but to the field in general, the approach in general. So I just wanted to make that clear. Your questions, of course, are perfectly clear because they're listed in the book. So there are no comments about those. Comments would be more about what I said or didn't say or didn't do. And I could have explained role reversal a little better because it's really quite a difficult process. And also, I'm going to go back to doubling because developmentally, doubling for the child comes first.
Mm-hmm.
They can empathize with people. They know how they're feeling, whether they're feeling bad or not so good. Doubling was done. I don't use doubling as much now because I want the protagonists to speak for themselves, be responsible for themselves. But we were working with very sick people whose elaboration wasn't always comprehensible to everybody. And so the double was important not only for the protagonist, but for the therapist, the director, because they could interpret after the session what the protagonist was talking about and what the double learned from the protagonist. So double is really the bridge between the director and the protagonist. And but it's a great privilege to be allowed to walk around in somebody's mind, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And for a sick patient to allow that, there must be, first of all, great pressure to do it, and secondly, in other words, a need, and secondly, the trust, and thirdly, the desire to really express themselves, to be allowed to express themselves. But there are many things that have been developed since then. For instance, there is the silent double. Doesn't speak, but simply accompanies the protagonist to help them feel more secure. And they don't have to speak, just to be there. And there's also what we call the containing double, which especially Dr. Kate Hudgens has developed, which instead of expressing themselves through the double contains them. This is especially used for trauma victims, not to re-traumatize them, but to help them to find their barriers again. So there are many ways of using the double. And there is the mirror technique. I talked about that in the other. You're sitting here, but you're being portrayed over there. And you see yourself as if in a mirror. And of course there are always distortions because another person isn't you, and isn't exactly like you, and doesn't know exactly what you're feeling and thinking and doing. They just come close. So although it's called the mirror technique, the auxiliary ego is actually in the double role, but separate from the protagonist. That hasn't been emphasized enough. Sometimes a double is used for the protagonist to watch how she might have acted, to show a different way of doing it, and perhaps several doubles to show different ways of managing a difficult situation. And the protagonist can then be allowed to experiment with which one is closest to what she'd like to be like, or how she'd like to handle it. So there are many ways to use the double, and I think especially in education with children, this is very important. Moreno told me, he never wrote this up, that he had a little girl whose nails were bitten down to the quick. And he coupled her with an older girl who didn't bite her nails and had beautiful nails. And little girls often look up to older girls.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw this other girl's nails, and she began to be good to her own nails. In other words, to use the double as a model for what the protagonist could achieve. And so it's more than a mirror, it's a projection of possibilities. That's useful with children, especially putting them into the future. They're going to a birthday party, but they don't know anybody there. They feel shy and embarrassed, or new people, or they're going to a new school, or mom and dad are divorcing and they are moving to another place.
Mm-hmm.
And even everyday quarrels with girlfriends. I did one with a group of 14-year-olds in one of the Moreno schools in Germany. This girl brought up the fact that she and her best friend had quarreled, and she was really sorry, and she would like to make it up. So I said, all right, why don't you role reverse and become your best friend? Let somebody show us how you behaved first to your friend, and then let somebody be you, and you be your friend, and see how it felt to be treated that way. I mean, I didn't say it explicitly like that, but that would indicate it. And that now you can role reverse and do it a different way. How would you like to do it? She finished up by shaking hands. So there are all kinds of ways of using the double and the mirror and the mirror and the double and the role reversal. They all really belong to the same sphere in psychodrama. I think we could do a lot more experimenting with that. The whole idea of allowing children to be how they really are, and then to let the children decide if that they want to change or not. In other words, to play, to use surplus reality. How would you I remember going to a mental hospital and taking all everybody, boys and girls. I appointed one of the boys who was the most active, hyperactive, to be the pilot of a spaceship. And he had to keep everybody quiet. And he loved it. He loved having this role of authority over the group. And we did really well. We landed and we began to tell people what we were seeing on this other planet. And we came back home again, and one of I think this one or another one said, boys, that was really healthy for us. But the staff was all upset because, they climbed all over the furniture. Now, who the hell cares what happens to the furniture? It's idiocy. So we need to start institutions of learning where the rules are off. All the old rules don't work, because they don't. To upset them all and to go the other way. I say, now let's do something different. That's the whole purpose of stepping out of this world into that other world. Psychodrama is the other world of possibilities. greater possibilities. I could have let you, in that videotape, I could have let you do a little more intensely what you were feeling with your friend who was superior to you as a player,
Marble
player.
Yeah.
Whether that made you feel inferior or anxious or whatever. I mean, I'm not assuming anything. I'm simply saying I could have gone into that a little bit more with you, so you could have felt it, and also into the role reversal with your friend to deepen it a little bit more. I don't know whether he had time limitations or what, but that could have been deepened a little bit, so that your learning could have been expanded. These are looking at my role, not at you. You were perfectly okay. The protagonist is always all right, no matter how crazy they are.
The problem is with the director sometimes.
Yes, the problem is being the director. And learning the director's role and learning to be free and to move into areas that normally people wouldn't move into. That's really the role of the director, to take the people by the hand and say, now, yeah, that's fine, now let's look at this world over here, which is going on anyway inside us. Whether it's a dream world or whether it's a conscious side world that we have. Well, I think we have a real contribution to make to education especially, and to involve the parents with their children so that they learn to role reverse when the parents are stuck with their kids. I remember one session we had with 8-year-old children and their parents, their mothers. I don't think their fathers came because they were working. And the problem they presented was, in wintertime up north, it gets very cold. And the mothers are worried about their kids catching cold. And they had these pants with zippers on them. They made the kids wear them. The kids hated them. And they resented having to wear them. So early in the morning, as they're getting dressed, the mother insists this little girl should wear these things. And the little girl is saying, but Mom, I can't get them off fast enough in the class, and then I get overheated. Well, being overheated is just as bad as being underheated in a way when you catch cold. And she said, and I'm besides that clumsy, I don't like them. So, mother reversed. It was interesting. The mother was an itchy nose from allergies, by the way. The mother was very tall, walked very straight, was very, I know who I am. She was into this one, secretary of that one, president of something else, you know, the bigwig. And she towered over the girl who, by the way, was also tall for her age, but actually looked like a nicked lily, you know, looking up at her mother. So she became aware of that. And when we role reversed, I told her, you know, Lisa doesn't stand like this. Lisa stands like this. So she had to bend down, although her kid was there physically, but she still had to bend down. And she sees this kid being all dominant and everything, having a great time dominating her mother. So they role reverse again. And I said, well, what solution do we have? And I turned to the child. And she said, well, Mother, why don't we see what the barometer says outside? And if it's a certain figure, I don't wear these. So they agreed on what the figure would be, beyond which she wouldn't have to wear the higher than that, but she wouldn't have to wear these things. And the children found their own solution. After this session, the mother came to me and she said, my God, am I really that tyrannical? My poor Kay. Her name was Kay. Lisa, my poor Kay. So in other words, the mother learned from the child how the child perceived her, and she could change how she related to the child. And that's what we need to teach the parents. And they can do it at home. Why must they learn how to do it when there's a constriction between them somewhere? And I already mentioned, and that is true, my Moreno's daughter was a teacher, 3rd graders. Once a month, she allowed everyone in the group to be the teacher for the whole day. I mean, so everybody got a chance during the month. And they just loved it. They fought to be the teacher. And they were very good. They were, I mean, they didn't get screwed up or anything. They were very deliberate and very cool and very calm and very positive. So we need to learn more from the children what their potentials are. We haven't the vaguest idea what their potentials are. I saw an interesting movie last night here on the internal channel in which an African-American boy born in the Bronx, New York, which is, you know, way down economically, has a great talent at writing. His classwork isn't good, gets only C's, but his essays and his work at tests is very high. Apparently his father was a drug addict and mother tried to convince him not to do drugs anymore. The father couldn't do it and just gave up and walked out. And ever since that time, the boy reads and reads. The mother says he reads books I've never even heard of, which is not unusual.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted him to be educated. But the teacher tells him, I don't understand this discrepancy between your test results and your class results. Anyway, because his high test results, he gets offered a scholarship in a high-class school. And there is a writing teacher who can't believe that he wrote these things. He said, you must have had an influence somewhere. Well, he did, but the writing was still his own. He did make a friendship with a writer who had written a book that was a great book, very well read, but was hidden away because he didn't want to be bothered with all the brouhaha that came with it. Never wrote a second book. And I mean, it was interesting tussle between, here is this really professional writer who's teaching the boy how to write, and here is this other man, a teacher, who this man knows that he tried to write a novel and it wasn't any good. So he knows that he can be very, very nasty or very, very helpful, depending on it. But because of the black-white problem, they have this idea that no black child can be talented, which is absolutely dangerous for a country like this where there's so many talented blacks. Anyway, the final scene of this poem, I have such an itch. You have to take that out. Oh.
Well, this is part of life also.
It's the pollen, you know. Springtime. One of the final scenes is, the teacher practically throws him out of the class because he knows it all. He does not admit that the kid knows it all. And the kid is getting very discouraged, but not enough to leave the school. He's going to continue challenging them. And they have a contest, a writer's contest, which is directed by this teacher, this difficult professor, who doesn't approve of anybody's writings. And during that contest, people talk. This other writer, who hasn't been seen by anyone for 50 years, comes up and says he wants to speak. And he reads a piece of writing. And the teacher says, it's a wonderful piece, thank you so much. And he said, yes, but what you don't know is that it was written not by me, but by my friend, Jamal Wallace. And this teacher, of course, is completely miffed because all this time he believed the boy couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a beautiful lesson that you don't stereotype a child. They have potentials we don't know about, and we want to open up those chances for them to prove their potential.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of work has particular meaning for children and the adults who have to take care of them. Because some of the teachers are lousy at dealing with children. They also have to be trained, retrained, to know what it is like to be in the student position. They forgot how they themselves had trouble in school and how they were maltreated. And it's like a long chain. You know, there was a book once written with somebody's hand on somebody's head is somebody's hand on somebody's head is somebody's hand on somebody's head is somebody's hand on somebody's head. In other words, oppression starts here and goes on in a long chain. That's what we're doing to our children. We're oppressing them. We're not freeing them. And it's a bad scene. You can see what our world is like. But I must say that I have more faith in the next generation. I think they are different. I've seen my grandchildren and the way they are with other people. They are different. They know that we're all together in this. So I hope, and especially for the little ones, if they're properly handled. Yeah.
By the way, you were mentioning right now when we were talking about Moreno in your office, something about the ha-ha.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
aha experience. You mentioned that in learning there is an aha experience. It is what Moreno calls action insight. The insight comes from the action, not on the verbal level, which might also be in an addendum, but mainly through action. We learn mostly through action. For instance, if you give a child a knife, and you, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing, he's going to cut his finger. No, let him experiment. What if he cuts his finger? He'll know next time how to handle it. I mean, parents are much too protective and underestimating the capacity of the child. They astonish us. They're absolutely astonishing.
Well, but the idea I was trying to explore
The action insight.
is to demonstrate, Zerka, that actually the therapeutical element starts with ha-ha, with an insight from the person in his or her awareness.
It doesn't start with it. It comes to them as they process themselves. It doesn't start at the beginning. If you had an aha at the beginning, you wouldn't need a therapist.
Well, fine. But you can have a therapist, but if you don't become aware of the problem that you are having, you are not going to be healed neither.
Right.
Right?
But
So,
it's not verbal insight. It's not something that comes from speech.
yes.
Or rather, it does not. The kernel of it is in action.
No, but it's something that happens in the awareness of the person, right?
In the learning process.
Yes, in the learning process, and then it guides the person to the healing
Right.
situation, and to the learning and to the development situation.
Yeah.
Do you have something else about the video we watched this morning, or that's fine?
Do you have any questions yourself?
No, I found that it was quite clear, having not seen that for almost 1 year.
I don't know whether I was clear enough about therapeutic community. By that I meant a community that the main focus was to have everybody live in that community therapeutically, to get what they need. Yeah, and the fact became very fashionable here with drug addicts. They call them therapeutic community, because the focus of the community was to get them clear of the drugs. It's very clear. The combination of hypnosis and psychodrama, I think, hasn't been tried enough. That would be interesting to see. I know that when I was a subject, I wasn't really completely under, because somebody said, we'll do this for so many minutes, and she was called to the phone, and when somebody else took over, and he wanted to end it, I said, Florence said we should do it. So, I mean, It depends on the depth of the hypnosis and that you achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure whether it's an altered state of consciousness or not. From my experience, I would say, well, yes, half and half. You know, I was outside maybe I could see my arm, but I'm not sure that it was an altered state of consciousness, and more a clarification of what was happening here visually. But that hasn't been studied enough. Another thing is the whole modeling. That was particularly important in the drug treatment program. That was successful. The counselors were former drug addicts who had made it in the world. And so they inspired the young people that they could also achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, many of these counselors developed AIDS from the dirty needles. And the young people said, well, if I'm going to die anyway, I might as well die. Be happy dying. Why should I bother with all this?
Yeah.
That destroyed the model. But the modeling is important for children. Healthy modeling. You do not pair a child with an unhealthy model, with a healthy one. Stronger, more integrated. Which is what the auxiliary ego is for the patient too.
For the sake of simplicity, Zerka, how do you distinguish between something that is healthy and unhealthy modeling? What is your way of defining?
A healthy person who has balance inside and outside, has some good relationships with other people and manages his or her way in the community. An unhealthy person is rejected by everyone, rejects everybody else, is delinquent, upsets everything. There are very, very many of those, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And they fall into drugs and God knows what, alcohol, abuse of all sorts.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we had sociometry in the classroom. You have seen the sociograms. And those kids that were rejected were given another chance to be with a child that was more developed, more integrated, more able to find his or her way into the world as a model. Put them closer together.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, kids love teaching each other. That's why they love the teachable. They love to teach each other.
Mm-hmm.
So good pair relationships, where one teaches one day, the other one teaches the other day, or even in a group.
Now, it's true that the video was based in a document that was produced more than 40 years ago, no? When you were asked by Moreno to put a sort of summary of rules and techniques. If you had to revisit with all you know today, all the evolution that we had in the psychodrama world, what would be different? What would be additional rules or techniques, or what do you think would be different?
No, I think I would enlarge on each one. Maybe not rules and techniques, because rules are also to be thrown out. I always tell people, there are a few rules, some are useful, some are not. But I think I probably would expand and deepen the examples that I give.
Mm-hmm. But these revisit process.
It seems to have been helpful to people.
Mm-hmm. This is not in your plans to do that anymore, to go back and to...
Not right now.
Not right
Actually,
now.
there are so many other things one can do to teach. I'm doing a lot of work in action now I mean, it's not that I didn't do it then, but we were opening the paths.
Mm-hmm.
The path is open now, so it's a lot more subtle and complex.
Mm-hmm. Good. So I think that for the time being, it's enough on the comment.